Francis Burley. Dr. Burley was named vicar of Bishops Stortford in 1590, which benefice he held at the time of his appointment to the important service of this Bible translation. Robert Teague. This name in all the printed lists of the translators has been misspelled Lee. It should be T or T. Dr. T was born at Deeping, Lincolnshire, and was educated partly at Oxford and partly at Cambridge. He was Archdeacon of Middlesex and Vicar of the Church of All Hallows, Barking, London. He is characterized as an excellent textuary and profound linguist. Dr. Teague died in 1620, leaving to his son an estate of £1,000 a year, which is worth mentioning because so rarely done by men of the clerical profession. Hadrian Saravia. This noted scholar was a Belgian by birth. His father was a Spaniard, his mother was a Belgian, and both were Protestants. He was born in 1530 at Hedin in Artois. Of his early life, no notices have reached us. He was, for some years, a pastor both in Flanders and Holland. He was, in his principles, a terrible high churchman, and seems from his zeal for the divine right of episcopacy to have had some trouble with his colleagues and the magistrates at Ghent, where he was one of the ministers in 1566. From that place he retired to England. He was sent by Queen Elizabeth's council as a sort of missionary to the islands of Guernsey and Jersey, where he was one of the first Protestant ministers, knowing, as he says of himself in a letter, which were the beginnings and by what means and occasions the preaching of God's word was planted there. He labored there in a twofold capacity, doing the work of an evangelist and conducting a newly established school called Elizabeth College. From his island home, he was recalled to the continent by the Belgian churches in 1577. He was invited to become professor of divinity at the University of Leiden in 1582, and soon after was made preacher of the French church in that city. In 1587, he came to England with the Earl of Leicester and became master of the grammar school in Southampton, where, in the course of a few years, he trained many distinguished pupils. His zeal for episcopacy led him to publish several Latin treatises against Beza, Danaeus, and other Presbyterians. He also published a treatise on papal primacy against the Jesuit Gretzer. All his publications relate to such matters and were collected into a folio edition in the year 1611. They are still highly praised by the Oxford divines, who have given occasion to Macaulay to say, in his caustic style, the glory of being further behind the age than any other class of the British people, in one which that learned body acquired early and has never lost. In 1590, Saravia was made Doctor of Divinity at Oxford, as had been done long before at the University of Leiden. He was made Prebendary of Gloucester next to Canterbury in 1695, and then of Westminster in 1601. This last was his highest preferment. He added to it the rectorship of Great Chart in Kent some 8 years after. He died at Canterbury January 15th, 1612, age 82 years. Thus, his fluctuating life ended in a quiet old age and a peaceful death. He is said by Anthony Awood to have been educated in all kinds of literature in his younger days, especially in several languages. It was his fortune to find friends and patrons among the great. Archbishop Whitgift, that stern suppressor of Puritanism, held him in high esteem and made great use of his aid in conducting his share in the controversies of the time. In particular, the archprelate relied much on Dr. Saravia's Hebrew learning in his contests with Hugh Broughton, that stiff Puritan whom Lightfoot styles the great Albionian divine, renowned in many nations for rare skill in Salem's and Athens tongues and familiar acquaintance with all rabbinical learning. Thus, the Prebendary of Westminster was accustomed to cross swords with no mean adversaries, and was no doubt thoroughly furnished with the knowledge necessary for a Bible translator. While Dr. Saravia was a Prebendary of Canterbury, the famous Richard Hooker was parson of the village of Bourne, about 3 miles distant. Between these worthies there sprang up a friendship cemented by the agreement of their views and studies. Professor Kibble says that Saravia was Hooker's confidential advisor, while the latter was preparing his celebrated books of the laws of ecclesiastical polity. Old Isaac Walton gives the following beautiful picture of their Christian intimacy. These two excellent persons began a holy friendship, increasing daily to so high and mutual affections that their two wills seemed to be but one and the same, and their designs both for the glory of God and peace of the church, still assisting in improving each other's virtues and the desired comforts of a peaceable piety. John Layfield. Dr. Layfield was Fellow of Trinity College, Cambridge, and Rector of the Church of St. Clement's Danes in London. Of him it is said that being skilled in architecture, his judgment was much relied on for the fabric of the tabernacle and temple. He died at his rectory in 1617. Few things are more difficult than the giving of architectural details in such a manner as to be intelligible to the unprofessional reader. Richard Clarke. Dr. Clarke is spoken of as a Fellow of Christ's College, Cambridge, and was a very learned clergyman and eminent preacher. He was vicar of Minster and Monkton in Thanet, and one of the 6 preachers of the Cathedral Church in Canterbury. He died in 1634. 3 years after his death, a folio volume of his learned sermons was published. But alas for folios and learned sermons in these days. When people look on such a thing, they are ready to exclaim, like Robert Hull, at the sight of Dr. Gill's voluminous commentary, "What a continent of mud!"